Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and this is Season 8, Episode 7. Today I'm having on the program someone I'm really excited to get a chance to talk to. Molly Gilbert is going to be on. She has a new cookbook out this week, Sheep Pan Sweets. You may have read her other cookbooks where she does wonderful things with sheep pan dinners. Now, I know that a lot of you have seen some of these things on, I think, Eats and things like that. Some of the food websites where they do little videos or they show simple things with sheep pans. And for those of us who cook for their families, these are just like a godsend because you can do some amazing things in a sheep pan in very little time and just turn out these bang up dinners. However, there's kind of like a learning curve with them because sometimes they can be utter shit. And Molly Gilbert really knows what she's doing here. She's tested out the theories, done different things with them. She's really kind of up the ante making some of these meals that are just beyond the obvious, like put in a sheet pan, bake, and then scoop onto a plate. She's taken it to a level of artistry that's really magnificent. And her book, Sheep Pan Sweets, is just a really good example of how good she is with this and how she's taken it to another level. I had a great time talking to Molly. She was a really great guest, and I know that you're going to have a wonderful time listening to the podcast. I'm going to have links to her website and her books on the bio. Check those out because, again, like if you're like me, if you're somebody who cooks for your family, these are really must-have books, and I'm lucky enough to have them, and I recommend you get them too. Without further ado, my guest, Molly Gilbert. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. Today, I am very honored to have on the podcast Molly Gilbert, who is a graduate of the French Culinary Institute and is the author of Sheep Pan Suppers and, as of this week, Sheep Pan Sweets, Simple Streamlined Dessert Recipes, a baking book. She is a food blogger of duncancrumble.com, a former cooking instructor, a private chef, former podcaster, and former recipe tester for the kitchens at Saveur. She lives in Seattle with her husband and son. Molly, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, can you tell our listeners who may not be familiar with your work a little bit about yourself in your own words?
Yeah. So I, right now, I'm a mom of 3 in Seattle and author of 3 cookbooks. The latest of which you just mentioned is Sheep Pan Suppers. I'm sorry, Sheep Pan Sweets. My first cookbook was Sheep Pan Suppers. So I grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs and trained in the culinary and pastry arts before trying out a number of different jobs in the food space, from private chef, as you mentioned, to culinary instructor, to food blogger. And I landed on cookbook author, which has been really, really great and fun. I love cooking seasonally and simply, letting the ingredients shine in my recipes, really. And what my books are about, I hope, is giving people the tools that they need to feel happy and comfortable in the kitchen, and also turn out some meals that they can be really proud of.
Now, I wanted to ask you about your time at Amherst College and the French Culinary Institute. What made you decide to go into food?
It's a good question. I didn't always know that I wanted to go into food. I always loved to eat. And so when I graduated from Amherst, I sort of, put on my adult hat and got a quote normal adult job in an office, and did that for about 2 years before I decided it was not for me. So I decided to enroll in the French Culinary Institute in New York, which is where I trained in culinary and pastry arts. And from there, it just kind of took off. It was a leap of faith at the time. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something with food, possibly something with writing. And that's where it all ended up.
Now, many of our guests they always have stories of like relatives or mentors that kind of taught them cooking. Did you learn to cook at a young age? Did you like it when you were a kid?
I didn't really. I grew up, I come from a big Jewish family, and we love to eat, and food is a big part of our gatherings and traditions. So food's always sort of been front and center in my world and important for me. But I did not start cooking myself until after college. I watched my mom and my aunts do a lot of cooking growing up. And when I went to college, Amherst is a really small school. So most people live in dorms for all 4 years of school. So I never even had a kitchen in college. And then when I graduated, feeling sort of alone and lost in the world, I gravitated back towards the foods that I had grown up eating and loving. And from there, just started cooking more and becoming more and more interested and invested in it.
Now, you wrote the sheet pan suppers in 2014. You took the idea of a one-pot meal and utilized a technique for cooking something easily that make dinner simple. Now, I've seen a lot of things over the years where, some of these cooking channels have done little snippets where they show you just throw a bunch of stuff on a sheet pan. I have to say, I've seen sheet pan suppers. I've read the cookbook, and you really take it to another level. You really know what you're doing. What made you get into this and kind of decide to write a cookbook on this?
Yeah, I honestly sort of fell into it. I wish I had a bigger, grander backstory of I had been, testing these techniques for years and years and years. But the honest truth is that I was connected with this cookbook editor who originally had the idea, and we discussed it, and I sort of grew more and more in love with the idea. And she needed an author for her book, and so I, very happily raised my hand, me, pick me. Um, and I was given the opportunity to write the book. And while writing it, I really, really wanted to just keep things as simple and streamlined as possible, and really unlock the idea of cooking a whole meal on a sheet pan, keeping things as simple and fuss free as possible, and not having to deal with all the dishes. And I had been just like everyone in the position of wanting to make really good food, but not wanting to like upend the entire kitchen, use all the ingredients, leave everything just like a trail of mess behind me. So that's the idea behind sheet pan suppers, is you can really do so many things just on a sheet pan, from appetizers to full meals, and I'm sure, as we'll discuss, even desserts, all on a sheet pan.
You really took it to another level, I feel like, because you made it very flexible. And there's a lot here. I really recommend the book for people like me who cook for a family and oftentimes have very limited amounts of time. My wife hates to cook, so I can often use some of the recipes you had, and I could prep the sheet pan meal and walk her through it over the phone, and she could cook the meal for the family pretty easily, and they're pretty impressed by the results normally. And to jump off on that, your one pan and done hassle-free meals from the oven to the table is just a really great cookbook as well, because it's just got some really great stuff in there for like I said, people like me who, you know, time is of the essence, and the most you could do to kind of make it go quicker and make it simpler is really better for you if you want to have any peace in the evening. What was your thoughts behind making this?
Absolutely. That is my thought, is that people are busy, and not everybody has time to really sit down and plan and churn out a beautiful meal every night. But that's what these books are designed to help with. So Sheet Pan Suppers was cooking meals on one sheet pan, and then the second book, One Pan and Done, was sort of meant to expand on that and keep that one pan slash pot concept, but expand to different types of pans and pots, so that you'll see Dutch oven recipes. There's like baking dish. We use baking dishes, sheet pans, cast iron skillets. So you can sort of open up your kitchen arsenal to include a lot more vessels, but it's the same general concept.
This episode is sponsored by Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and culture in human history. To learn more about this organization and their work, please visit their website at www.chnorcal.org. Now, you followed up this with Sheet Pan Sweets, which is the newest cookbook. And this is a book of dessert recipes that you're having going to come out this week. I really got a chance to look at the book, and I really love it because you have some really great recipes that are very simple, very low fuss, and at the same time, they look impressive. None of them are dowdy or kind of simplistic looking. They all look kind of actually fabulous and very decadent. What was your thought when you wrote this cookbook?
Well, I have a massive sweet tooth, always have. And
Me
so,
too.
so the idea for this book was sort of just a natural continuation of my other cookbooks. I've been wanting to write a pure dessert cookbook for a long time, so I was very excited at the opportunity to do so. But yeah, that's the idea, is to keep things simple as usual, but come up with some really impressive and just tasty desserts. There's chapters. The first chapter is a sheet cakes. So the idea again is keeping things as simple as possible, but turning out some really decadent, delicious sweets. So the book starts out with a chapter on sheet cakes, which is kind of as simple as it gets. A lot of them are one bowl kind of affairs. And then there are, you can bake a layered cake or even a rolled cake on a sheet pan. You bake one sheet of cake and then you cut them into pieces and stack them up.
Which I loved, by the way. I thought that was ingenious. I had never thought of that before, and that's freaking brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it just, you cook the whole thing on one pan. You don't have to deal with multiple round cake pans and cooling, everything cools at the same time. It's just kind of simplifying the whole thing. And then there's cookies, obviously, that was a no-brainer on a sheet pan, and bars. And the idea with bars and cakes, and I even have like some slab pies recipes and stuff on there. A lot of these recipes are meant to feed a crowd. So, if you have a book club meeting, if you told the PTA that you'd bring something for the bake sale, if you are just having a party and need to feed a lot of people, these recipes are perfect for that.
I thought the bar cookies were especially good in that regard because it really seemed like good stuff to bring to work or to a function. It just was really, and again, none of it looked like anything that was, it all looked impressive, like stuff that people go, wow. Was there any favorites of yours in the book that you really like to make a lot?
Yeah, that's such a hard question,
I
but
know,
yeah.
I know. I love asking it because I know it's a tough one, but everybody's got a one favorite, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I go back to this. I call it Jack's chocolate chip cake with fudge frosting. It's my son's name is Jack, and it's the cake that he requested for his third birthday. That's just one of my favorite recipes, like full stop. It's so simple, but so delicious. And maybe it's just nostalgic for me, something about a sheet cake. But there's so many recipes that I love in here. There's one that I call patchwork cookie bars, which is you make one dough and then you flavor it in three separate ways. So you're not making three separate doughs. It's just like the base of one dough and then three separate flavors, and you kind of blob them all over the pan, so that when it bakes up, it's sort of like a patchwork quilt-ish cookie bar situation. So you can cut them to like include different flavors in each slice, or you can cut them so each slice is different and you have three different flavors. But that is one of my favorites as well.
I love that. As I just think that'd be really good in my household. I think my family would really love that because you can kind of please everybody. That kind of is
Yeah,
nice.
exactly.
Now, in addition to your cookbooks, you've worked as a recipe tester for the kitchens of Saveur, and you've been a cooking instructor and a private chef. What are these things like for you? I mean, how did you get to work for Saveur? I imagine that was pretty exciting.
It was. I was an intern in the test kitchen there for a bit. And um yeah, those are all sort of things that I tried on before I landed in cookbook writing, and they've all informed my writing and my cooking, because I learned a lot at all those different jobs. Uh, Being a private chef was really interesting, and ultimately just not for me. But I so respect the people who are in that kind of work, because it's so hard and so physical, um, but also so great in a lot of ways. Yeah, I really, the jobs that I've done in the food space really run the gamut. I worked in a candy kitchen for a while.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, I taught kids cooking classes. So
Nice.
I sort of jumped all around in the food space.
Now, you have a former blog. They say that all that's still up and you can still get the recipes on that, Dunk and Crumble. It's a
Mhm.
pretty magnificent blog, and you ran it for quite a while. What was that like for you, and what kind of feedback did you get from your fans?
Um, yeah, thank you. I started blogging while in my corporate job, as sort of a creative outlet for myself, just to document the recipes that I was making, and just keep writing. I think writers would tell you just write, get your work out there. So that's why I started it. And it actually helped me land my first book deal because I was able to point to something and say, this is my writing. This is kind of, what I do. And I was connected with my editor that way. But yeah, I mean, I share all kinds of recipes, photos, a lot of personal stories on my blog. And I love blogging. I just, since I've had kids, have sort of let that fall by the wayside. So, maybe I'll pick it back up again someday, but you're right. It's still there. The recipes are all there and you can look stuff up and find different things.
And we'll have a link to that in the bio. And I encourage people to check it out. It's a fabulous website and it's got a lot of great things on it. Now, in addition to that, you also had a podcast, and Eat It Too. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that was like for you?
Yeah, I started my podcast with my friend Sarah, who's wonderful, a few years ago, also pre-kids actually. And the idea behind the podcast was that we would take a food phrase like, to butter you up, or, a tall drink of water, some sort of phrase that had a food element to it. And we would sort of briefly go into the history of the food phrase and sort of why it was used, and then jump off from there to talk about whatever food was mentioned in the phrase. So we talk all about butter and where it comes from, what we like about it, recipes that use butter or something, whatever the phrase in the moment was. And that was super fun. I'm so happy that I was able to do that.
And you can still listen to that. I'm going to provide links to that in the bio as well.
Cool.
In addition to your publishing success, your work has been featured on QVC, Today Show, and the Washington Post, Fine Cooking, Parade, Every Day with Rachel Ray, and more. How did you get to work with these media greats? I mean, this is a big deal. These are very well seen venues. What was this like for you?
Yeah, it was super, super fun. Sorry.
Okay, we can cut anything out.
Okay. Super fun. And I was very happy to get the opportunity to do all of those things. Those were sort of jumping off points from my first book after Sheet Pan Suppers came out. It did quite well. And so I was given the opportunity to write little pieces or snippets for all of these really great media outlets. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. I'm just really happy that I got to do it.
Did you get to meet anybody from these places like QVC or Rachel Ray?
I did not get to meet Rachel Ray, but while I was on QVC, I was on with the host David Venable, who hosted, in the kitchen with David, who's such a bright light, such a wonderful personality, and it was so much fun to be on with him.
Oh, I love that. I love QVC. What food writers do you like to read? Who inspires you?
I have so many food writers that I love to read and who inspire me. In the baking space, I would say I love anything by Dory Greenspan.
Yes.
I have so many of her books and I read her column in the Times when it comes out. I love Zoe Francois. I don't know if you know her. She has a book called Zoe Bakes that came out in the last, I want to say maybe the last 2 years. It's a wonderful baking book. And I have this book called 100 Cookies by Sarah Kiefer, which is a lovely book. And she's also a blogger as well. There are so many people in the food space. Joy Wilson from Joy the Baker is one. She's been blogging forever. And I love her style and I love her recipes.
So Molly, what's next for you?
That's a great question. I don't have a great answer for it yet. I'm just going to kind of wait and see. My youngest, my daughter is 3 months right now. So I'm doing a lot of momming and parenting at home right now, which is wonderful. And I'm glad that I have the opportunity to do so. But I do hope that I can continue to keep writing and baking and cooking recipes and sharing them with the world.
One last question that's kind of unscripted I wanted to ask, because I'm always curious about the publishing process.
Yeah.
Sheet Pan Sweets has some really great food photography in it, as does the other ones. It really kind of highlights the recipes. How much of a hand do you have in that? And what did you think of the visual input when you received that from the publisher?
Yeah, it's been an evolution. So Sheet Pan Suppers, my first book, I actually took the photos myself.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Did a great job.
Thank you. It was just very sort of bare bones, low budget. I did it in my very luckily brightly lit San Francisco kitchen. But for my next two books, I hired photographers, really talented photographers actually, to sort of help me elevate that because um, it's a lot to do all by yourself. And I don't have the sort of technical background to do it. Um, and for this last book, Sheet Pan Sweets, I was in the kitchen helping to cook all of the recipes before they were shot. So again, I think doing it all myself would be a lot. And I was really happy to get to work with Dana Gallagher in Sheet Pan Sweets and with Erin Goyoaga for my second book, One Pan and Done. But it's really fun to be behind the scenes while the photos are being taken. It's just, both Erin and Dana work with natural light, which is sort of tough to come by here in Seattle, which is where Erin and I shot the book. But
you mentioned San Francisco. Did you live here in San Francisco? I live in the Bay Area now.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I lived in San Francisco for about 2, maybe 3 years before I moved up here to Seattle, which is where my husband is from.
Do you have anything you miss? Any food things you miss from the city?
Oh my gosh, what food don't I miss from the city? It's a
Yeah.
good eating city. I miss going to the farmers market every week. I mean,
The one at the
at the ferry building.
ferry building. God, I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, it's like a festival. I love it.
it is. It was like such a party. I lived up in Russian Hill, so just up the hill. And
I love Russian Hill.
yeah, I mean, I don't miss the hills necessarily, but just it's so beautiful. The architecture, the light that comes through, it's so gorgeous. There's a lot that I miss about San Francisco.
Yeah, I love that area, and I love being able to go to Chinatown. Just so beautiful. I miss that part
Mhm.
of the city.
Yeah.
I don't go there much. I used to work there, so I used to spend a lot of time in it. But
Yeah.
it's a great place. It's unaffordable, but it's a really fun place.
One of the reasons we moved. Yeah, although
Yeah.
Seattle's no better now, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Molly, it was really great talking to you. I really enjoyed our chat, and I really want to wish really huge success to Sheet Pan Sweets, but I don't think you're going to need it. I think you're going to do great, as with the other books. So congratulations on your new book.
Thank you so much, Dean.
That was my conversation with Molly Gilbert. She has a new cookbook out this week, Sheet Pan Sweets, Simple, Streamlined Dessert Recipes. We have a link to that in the bio. Next week, I'm going to be talking with Chef Keith Corbin, who wrote the new memoir, California Soul, an American epic of cooking and survival. Corbin is a James Beard Award-nominated chef and co-owner of Alta Adams in Los Angeles. Please tune in next week for that very serious conversation. We explore his life and his book. If you like this program, please share it on social media for others. We always like to have new people listening to the program. If you like to leave me a tip, you can go to the link in the bio as well for the Buy Me a Coffee link. We want to thank Asian Men Records for letting us use the song Talk About Love in our intro and outro. We really appreciate that. And we want to thank Asian Men Records. You can go to the link in the bio and look at their some of the artists that are on the label. You can buy an LP, you can buy a sticker or a hoodie. We always like to recommend people that label. I hope you all have a really great week this week. I hope you guys are cooking up something new, maybe from one of the cookbooks that we've had on the program. Until then, keep cooking.
I've been getting better, better.